the U.S. cover is very He-Man, Woman Haters Club fantasy, and the Dragon Quest cover is dope Dragon Ball Z artwork.
And Kenny prefers the North America artwork. The sexist one. Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 389. The question of the week is comparable to last week's question, but reverse it. So, what is the worst video game mascot of all time?
Arrow the Acrobat.
So just straight up, we're going with a little bat that does acrobatic. I think that's just a bad game. Is what
you can't describe it.
Bad.
There's a problem. You had trouble describing it. He's like a bat that doesn't
more specifically. He's an acrobat.
Yeah, really bad.
It's just a circus character. It's really bad, and they tried to make like a new character, and it failed.
Like Nolan, I'm going to pull from our backlog.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you that the most offensive ones are not just bad games, but are attempts to monetize and shove products in front of people's faces.
I know where you're going.
I'm not going to say the one you're going to say. I'm not going Domino's. I'm going to say Cool Spot.
That's what I was thinking.
Even though...
I like Cool Spot. I thought about him.
He is cool by definition.
As I was going through the backlog, I came across him, but I think he's a cool little spot.
I F with Cool Spot.
Yeah.
You're as I think about it, I don't hate it.
Go
I hate
with the Domino's one.
Yeah, the Domino's one is what I wrote down. So the Noid. Is patently the worst video game mascot of all time in a game called Yo! Noid. And
Noid.
He's hideous. Look at him and tell me you want pizza. That's not what happened.
Right. It doesn't make me want to do anything nice. It just makes me sad and scared. It's a terrible mascot. Terrible.
I wrote down one other that might be controversial.
Ooh. Okay, let's hear it.
We've interacted with him somewhat recently, and he's got a body that's not his. I'm talking about Earthworm Jim. I think he is not a good video game mascot.
Maybe controversial to some. Wow. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you.
I'm gonna disagree.
Okay. First of all, he's just an earthworm.
Not interesting.
He is not just
He's not even his body. That body is
great.
not his. It's stolen.
Yeah, but that's not like just an earthworm doesn't go around doing earthworm Jimmy things.
He's a goober, and it doesn't make me want to play his game.
But that's the point.
When I see Mario, I'm like, yeah,
it's a me.
No, yeah, it's a me playing the game.
The reason you don't want to play Earthworm Jim like Arrow the Acrobat is because of the game, not because of the character.
No, he's ugly.
Old and kind of outdated in style, but like he works.
Hey, dude,
I don't know. I disagree there.
Next week, do hottest mascot.
Ooh, sexiest.
Yeah.
Okay. There's slightly different
said
identifiers, but I've already got a list.
I've got a list.
Earthworm Jim also appears on that one, which is interesting.
Yeah.
No, we should probably go ahead and hop into the episode proper before we get accused of dragging this intro bit on for too long. Like in our retro game of the week, Dragon Quest II.
Overview.
Dragon Warrior 2.
Nope.
Yep.
What do you mean, nope?
I mean, that's the name on the game when the game dropped. That's how titles
Dustin
for
goes
things
by
work.
the Japanese standard.
Well, hold on. That's not the name of the game when the game dropped. What you could have said anything else except that.
It's on the box.
That's what it's plastered with.
Okay, no.
Are you confused?
No, you are.
Are you confused,
Okay,
Dustin?
well, enlighten me.
Okay, the original title of this game in this series is Dragon Quest, and when it came to North America, it was changed to Dragon Warrior.
Where are we?
I'm sorry.
Are we in North America
They put Dragon Quest, those two words in English on the Japanese game?
This
when
episode's
it
going
came
to be
to
awesome.
America, that's the language we speak.
I
and
do
the
not
audience
give
we
this
are,
game my
and the
vote for
games
New
that
Game
we
Plus status.
played.
This episode is going to be awesome. I'm so excited.
It had the words Dragon Warrior on it. I'm telling
It
you, I
does
can
say
get my
Dragon
NES
Warrior.
cart right now. Dragon Warrior 2 was the name that this game came out when it came out for the NES in 1990. This is part of the
yes. When you add all
series.
those modifiers, you are correct.
I'm sorry, you're right. Let me be less specific, which is your complaint with how I do things all the time. Dragon Warrior 2 is the second game in a series also widely known as Dragon Quest that sort of became that series, and maybe a series you're more familiar with under that title. It is the second game in the series that defined my childhood.
Did it really?
And so everyone needs to tread carefully.
Well, I didn't know it
in this game,
your childhood.
I mean, that's big. That's a big, bold statement. But this was a core first RPG for me.
Okay.
This game follows the descendant of the hero in Dragon Warrior, the original one. So you're a descendant of Erdrick, and on your own, though, you're gonna have a hard time slaying the evil Hargon. Is that the bad guy's name here? The big bad guy?
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Yep, that's clearly not correct. And so you team up with a couple family members and who are also descendants. You know, you gotta keep it in the family, and you go out to destroy evil.
All right, such an introduction. Let me clarify some things that I think are important. I have
he's a hater.
Zero issue with us calling this Dragon Warrior 2, because that is what it was in North America. But I think that what we haven't done, and what I was trying to communicate, and what we clearly need to do, is communicate that this game started in Japan as Dragon Quest 2, and didn't start in 1990, it started in 1987, which all of that is important context, because 1990 is a totally different era than 1987. This game is early.
It's very early.
And we have and so I think putting that in our frame of reference, because this is amazing and crazy to me, but Final Fantasy is early. But that was in December of 1987, whereas Dragon Quest 2 was in January of 1987, meaning
so they have been doing it.
1 and 2 predate by a considerable length of time any of the Final Fantasy series, which is mind-blowing to me.
I hear people sometimes rag on Final Fantasy, and especially at the time probably, for stealing Dragon Quest's formula, like what they like. It really is in many ways a copy paste. Back then it was. It's very not so now, but
they went some different directions, and they had their own flavor to it.
They had crystals.
It's not just that. They had their own flavor. They went a lot more story heavy, or at least they attempted to. That's one of the things. There's many things that separated this and made it different. But yes, these early games they're related.
I wasn't sure on the order. I'm not surprised when I hear that now that I've played this second one, because a lot of the things that this game did as an evolution of its series certainly looks like it was influential on Final Fantasy 1 in ways that I wouldn't have expected, which is crazy, because in my mind these were fairly comparable, and they were about the same time. And original Final Fantasy 1 was great. It does some things a lot better than this game, but it definitely draws some influence from the things that they were doing.
Absolutely.
And Enix was the publisher too. So
right. Yeah, I had a couple of moments throughout this week that I was just like, are you kidding me? Like that this is where that all started in some actual pretty big ways.
Some very significant ways that still impact JRPGs, the genre today. So
today.
It'll be interesting to talk about. We did play Dragon Quest on episode 24 in February of 2016.
Episode 24.
Episode 24.
We did?
Yes.
I thought it was so much later.
No.
There are other games.
No, it was really early.
It was super early, and just to set the tone, Nolan was the only one that did not give that game his vote for New Game Plus status.
That sounds like something I would do.
which
sounds like foreshadowing.
Allow that to be. Well, allow that to set the tone for this episode.
You're kind of the one that started this one off a little spicy, not me.
Talking about me?
Talking about you.
Yeah.
Yes, because as I've said, there was some context that was missing that we really, really needed to give.
Well, the other context about those two versions is that the U.S. cover is very He-Man, Woman Haters Club fantasy, and the Dragon Quest cover is dope Dragon Ball Z artwork.
and Kenny prefers the North America artwork. The sexist one. It's not.
That's the traditional one.
But it's very traditional. Could be on any fantasy arcade game or like console game of.
It looks like that book you like, Kenny.
80s.
What's that fantasy series? That's like the
Wheel
big
of Time.
One? Yeah, it looks just like the Wheel of Time to me.
I mean, it's not too far off.
I could see the argument there. Yeah, I was going to give you a hard time, but I could see it. Whereas your tastes, Nolan, lean anime, and that's 100% not my wheelhouse. It is.
They do. He loves more
anime. That's more the art style on the other cover. Yeah. So we're all the things that we wish we weren't.
Amen.
Gameplay.
In many ways, this game is a sequel to Dragon Warrior 1. What a terrible statement.
In many ways, I would say probably in all
like
ways.
In the title?
Yeah. Yeah. This game is the sequel to Dragon Warrior 1. Quest. But is uniquely different in a lot of really key ways. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is ways that this game is different, because
it's not different.
Has the core gameplay elements that are very similar, but it deviates in a lot of ways that I didn't expect and that I think wildly improve the experience.
Sure, but I do think the core of what this game is Dragon Quest 1, where it's very traditional JRPG, and I say traditional. This was the kind of first, this was defining it. So it was new, but you are going from town to town. You have an overworld. You are battling, and you, in these games specifically, you're progressing the story, kind of, by speaking to literally everyone. So that was in Dragon Quest 1, and
I almost think that this one, I love how you talk about it. I almost think this one is better to talk about as traditional RPG even than as traditional JRPG.
No.
Yes, it started in Japan. Yes, has some of that. I get, this is Enix. There's some elements there, but there's also a lot of vibe here that feels almost kind of PC era RPG, with the scrolling text, the large amounts of influence, the characters and their styling. To me, this felt like where that was crossing over and sort of becoming something unique and on its own, but it really feels pretty neutral to me. I know that's a silly nuance to get caught up on.
Let me land in the middle and just make it is very much just traditional JRPG Dragon Quest. However, if watching Kenny's first play and then spending time with him this week, I got to do something fun this week, and I would say well over 50% of his game time this week I was able to watch and be a part of.
Why was I invited?
I streamed a whole bunch. You got to watch some. You came.
A minute or two.
It was amazing to be able to watch Kenny again. You get some of this in the first play. Call out things regularly of oh, this is new. Oh, they changed this. Oh, they did this. He knows Dragon Quest so well.
Very well.
He spent so many, and he hasn't played it in years. So that's
years.
Legacy memories. And so while it is very, it's for those that aren't, super hardcore fans of the series, they could see these two games and be pretty much the same thing. But coming to a professional like Kenny, he could probably list a dozen things right now, just very easily, of changes, upgrades to the formula, things like that. And it was
tons of quality of life improvements. And we'll talk about some of those specifically. Really? Yeah, we won't talk about some of the nuance, but stairs In the first one, you have to
hold
physically
on,
hit a button.
We're not going to talk about nuance. And then he goes to stairs.
So
one of the more nuanced things of the experience.
Yeah, I know.
Stairs,
Sometimes
clouds.
I say I'm not going to do things just to give me the excuse to do them.
Yeah.
That's not news to anyone.
Wait.
Stairs. In the first Dragon Quest, you had to do an action. You had to like physically
choose
hit a button
stairs.
to choose to
Upstairs.
go down the stairs. Yeah, and in this game, it just automatically takes you up or down.
Brilliant.
Huge
Life-changing.
quality of life
Life
improvement.
changing. I mean, a game is made for you based on stairs. On Castlevania, we spent a good 5 minutes about you
my goodness.
complaining
Stairs and
about
clouds.
stairs.
Stairs and clouds.
Stairs and
Stairs.
clouds are
Those are the two
Stairs and
things.
clouds.
non-negotiables for Kenny.
Okay. Although there are a lot of changes, it is still sticking to what has become the traditional JRPG formula that Nolan kind of referenced. So you are in a squad this time. You start as a solo person, which was a brilliant thing to do because that's what was all of Dragon Quest was one person. But then you go and recruit two other people. They are your cousins. It's a prince of Cannock and princess of Moonbrook, I believe. And they're your cousins, and you bring them onto your team. You, as the warrior, have no magic throughout this entire game. You are just a fighter. And then when you get your cousin, the prince, he's kind of a red mage before there was red mage, in the sense that he's got some middle to low grade magic abilities, but he can also do some physical damage.
A little bit of a hybrid.
And then you've got the princess, and she is your mage. She is the one that gets high-level spells. And so you've got this variety within your team as you're going from village to village, town to town, talking to everybody, as you said, Nolan, and you really do need to in this game. And that's leading you along the quest to find, eventually you're finding 5 crests or sigils so that you can unlock certain things. And ultimately defeating the bad guy. And so you've got an overworld, random encounters, dungeons, random encounters, keys. It's all of those JRPG things.
And can I say that I really appreciated only having 3 party members, and they are assigned to what they do. I know that Final Fantasy experimented a lot later in the series with like job classes and stuff like that, and that's cool. Like, but 6, we played that not too long ago. You get so many characters, and some people like that. And Fire Emblem, I like it, but in my JRPGs, I get a little stressed.
Ooh, interesting.
And so on this one, I kind of loved that it was just like, here's your mage, here's your like in between battle mage, and then here's your fighter. If it was straightforward in a good way. I liked it.
I've always preferred smaller teams. Even Final Fantasy VII is relatively small compared to other games in the series.
Right.
But yeah, 3 is super nice. It's early, right? 1987, so you're not getting tons of character development and exploration, but you are only having to manage 3. So in battle, it really allows you to like specify like how I'm building, how I'm equipping, how I'm using.
And they follow like they each have their own.
They're on the
look, and they
map.
follow, like that was also a surprise. Was that in the first one, Kenny?
No,
You're only
because
one
it's just
person.
you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was kind of early for that kind of thing, because I always love it when my party follows me in games.
This is the first JRPG where you have a team.
Wow.
Right. And not just have a team, but like grow your team. Like there's some games that are like, here's your 4 characters, like go at it. This sort of started that whole trope, or at least was one of the early popular adopters of starting that trope of like meeting people along the way and like the story expanding and them joining your quest. And that becomes like so core to all of these. You not only have more characters in your party, you're also fighting more characters. In the original Dragon Warrior, you versus one character all the time.
No, he's not even just saying like a variety
means
of
instead of one.
In Dragon Quest, you're fighting one enemy at a time.
Single enemies at a time. And this is vastly different. It makes combat a lot more strategic.
Difficult.
Because you have to, and difficult. Yes, that too.
Yes,
that's totally
very
fair. yeah, you don't know when you're going to get an encounter, if you're going to fight against one enemy or if you're going to fight against 7 enemies at the same time. And so
7?
that becomes yeah, it gets up to big groups as you get later.
Not balanced.
That becomes in some places that becomes almost a problem because that's a very difficult thing to balance. And we can kind of have that conversation later if we want to get into it. But thankfully, they gave you some tools to address that. They gave you magic that attacks sort of pieces of groups at a time instead of one enemy only. And so there's some gameplay elements that adapt to the fact that you've got these multiple parties. But I love that. It makes you actually think a lot more about fights and how you're going to approach them, which enemies you need to kill first and why. And so it adds a lot more sort of strategic element to the game. It does add a lot more difficulty. And there were moments where you would get more than one of a certain enemy, but they wouldn't be like in their own group. That really frustrated me. Just for like targeting magic. But that's all like just little complaints. Overall, adding more variety just added depth, and that's really welcome because the first game is wonderful, but it's a little shallow.
Adding all of that does provide depth, but it also provides difficulty. This is commonly referred to as the most difficult game in the franchise.
I'm not surprised by that. Because there is an answer to the difficulty, and it's to grind.
Yes, but even with that, there are... And the reason why I think largely that this game is so difficult is because it's so early. And so they're figuring balance out.
Yeah,
they're creating balance.
Yeah.
They're trying to like find that. They don't have other things to work off of.
And the game's they can't patch it. Like,
right. That too. But like one of the amazing things is Kenny had referenced earlier, like it felt PC-ish, and I don't really get that. But I was able to like in these early JRPGs, what the developers were attempting to do was to bring the RPG experience from PCs that were happening already at the time,
and from D&D.
Right, very those kind of adventures. A lot of them were first person. You're kind of just walking, kind of think Doom, and you're finding a key and you're doing this. They were trying to bring that to the home console in a totally different way. So they were having to just like figure it out and create things. And so you can see how they were being creative and trying these things, but on the other hand, you can see how, man, they did not strike a balance. They did not play test this. No one went through the last dungeon. Things like that.
Is it impossible?
Kenny, have you gotten mad this week?
Oh, yes. I've gotten like wildly excited numerous moments, and I've also gotten wildly frustrated
it's an
and
emotional experience.
Rage walked away numerous times as well. Partly that's just because I feel this game deeply. Like there's the nostalgia plus this whole like it's a sequel, and so I was just really excited about it. But beyond that, just the game itself has lots of highs and lows and lots of just variants. What kind of enemies you're getting. It can be so random, and whether you succeed or fail in a fight can be so just like almost binary. Like things are fine, and then they just fall apart and everybody's dead.
Zero
and
balance.
You're like, well, there was nothing I could do about it. So yeah, especially in the later game, balance is tricky here for sure.
Okay, so the grinding aspect I expected, and so it wasn't as like grueling. I don't love it, especially when you must do it out the gate. Like the guide I was following, walk outside the town, grind for a few levels. Okay, already. I don't love that, but I got over it. What I still just do not love about these two games, Final Fantasy does story progression so much better, even in their first iteration. They tell you where to go, and they tell you what to look for, clues. This one doesn't feed you anything.
It's totally
it really
different,
does feel like a build your own adventure kind of like experience. It's different. It's very different.
It kind of is. It's a little open-ended in that you can sort of do things in an order like that you discover and how you want. They do a good job of certain elements of the game and progression being like gated, both like figuratively and literally in a lot of cases, behind things, so that you do have to sort of, peel back an onion. I do think Final Fantasy does that a little bit better in terms of it feeling like story natural. But I know this is going to be the contentious thing for a lot of people, but I love the way this game does it, because there's this sort of like exploration and this puzzle element where you're like talking to NPCs, but it might be one NPC in this town plus a different NPC in this town plus a different NPC in this town, and they all give you a little bit of information, and then you got to like take that information and figure out what that means and like experiment. And it's not for everybody. Right. It makes for a very slow gameplay, and they expect you to be walking around sort of killing things as you do this process. This is not a game that if anyone was like, how should I play it? I would say do it in a week for a podcast, because it's a slow grind, not just in fighting enemies, but in unveiling the story and its secrets.
Most people aren't playing this game rushed in a week. And so,
no.
And back in the late 80s, early 90s, you just had more time, and
absolutely.
And so spending an entire summer on this game where you've got a notepad beside you where you're like writing down clues that you find.
I can see that. Yes.
That is fun, but that is so far removed from today, and that's why I do think Final Fantasy does feel a lot better in the intuitiveness, because early on they're kind of giving you a lot more clarity of like where to go and what to do. But yes, this was just a different take on that Kenny and other people, and I do see that. I mean, Nolan, you and I both like see that appeal, like how that could be.
I absolutely do. Yes.
It's like you're a detective, kind of like finding out a clue here and here. And can you imagine the feeling of when you put the pieces together and it works?
Sure.
Like that has got to be amazing.
I totally see that appeal. I just think, again, Final Fantasy, the doability of Final Fantasy is a better feeling. This one feels like such a mountain to climb. And yeah, if you've got the time and the willpower and you're a child and this is your entertainment and you don't have a phone, yeah, this is going to pop off. But I'm none of those things. So
right. And think about
I'm all of those things.
But also think about the amount of actual intentional grinding comes down when you're just wandering around the world somewhat aimlessly to find these things, because you're naturally fighting along the way, so you will be getting stronger.
I see that, yeah.
But grinding is a thing, and yes, although I think my experience, and I think Kenny's experience largely, was you grind early on when you get the first couple of characters, or as you get them, so that you can get some of your base like weaponry and armor from the money, and as well as the abilities, and then you'll need to run from some battles, but then you won't need to really intentionally grind until very end game.
I didn't grind enough early.
Okay.
You're right. That's definitely probably the case. I got impatient and just set off, and so I wasn't constantly a little bit above.
It felt like a struggle always. Yeah. You were always having enemies that were a little
I should have got like several levels
where the game wanted you to be, for sure. And that makes it hard. That makes it punishing. And even learning sort of the expectations, having played these games before, makes that a little easier. If you don't have that sort of discovery of how the series works, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time as you play, because it's going to feel difficult the whole way through. I know we've talked about difficulty. I do think they did a great job early in not having as spiky a difficulty as like the previous game. Dragon Warrior 1, you walk slightly too far and you're just dead. Like literally, and it's a small world, and so the like tiers of difficulty like kind of jump up on you. This one was a lot more gradual, but once you did get to a place where it was sort of too much, it slapped you in the face really hard. One other quality of life change different from the first one to the second one that we should talk about, because ultimately it probably ruins the first game for some people, and so was the wisest choice they could possibly make. You can save your game in pretty much any town you go to. In the original game, every time you wanted to save, you had to come all the way back to the starting castle.
You surprised I didn't give it New Game Plus?
No,
a save place at one place on the entire game.
Let me go all the way back to the beginning, battle along the way to save my game.
Right, and then go all the way back to the places you were trying to make progress and explore them
yeah,
again.
not a great idea.
Forever. It was such a bad mechanic, and they got rid of that here. Like, pretty much any town you get to becomes your new hub. You can explore that town, go to the world all around it, save, pick the game back up again, and go. And world of difference. Thank you, developers, for getting a brain.
And it's needed because whereas the map in the first game is 100 by 100 tiles, this one is 256 by 256.
I was going to say, because I did watch you play some, that map is big.
Double.
It's huge.
Oh, more than double.
How do they do that?
So much so that they fit a condensed version of the first map in this one. And when Kenny found it this week, it was really cool. Yeah.
Such
some of the same
fan
locations.
service.
Yo, they're goated
You
for
get
that.
to go back to the original continent. It
That's
shrunk
cool.
down and like pared down a little bit, but you have one or two really key locations you get to revisit. So cool.
You get to visit the final castle from the first game.
From the first
that's
one.
With some
sick.
Easter eggs for fans of the series. Like, it's
They're
really
Yeah.
great for that. Are
That's
you
very
serious?
So great.
Chunsoft?
Very
Yep. It
But
was wild.
With the larger map, you need multiple save points and you need a way to navigate it. Also brand new, I think the first in JRPG history, they have a vehicle, and in this one it's a boat. They've got a boat. At mid-game, they started this, again, a trope that is still today in JRPGs, but mid-game you get a vehicle that you're able to travel around in. Often it's airships, but in this one it's a boat that you get to travel the seas.
Kenny, did you get
I
super
love it.
hype?
I got super hyped. Like, oh man, this is gonna make getting places easier. This is gonna allow for a bigger, more complex world. And they were good about not just like opening up the whole world to you, you know, putting some islands with mountains on the outside so your boat can't land on it. And still, even though you're getting the like strong thing that lets you go anywhere, still gating your experience so that you still had to like unlock things and kind of work through some story goals, and yet you had this vast world to explore. I don't know, Dustin, you can actually correct me because I never got in my game an in-game map, but there was an NPC that made me feel like there was one. He said something that implied it. So I don't know if it exists. I never got one. And the game was so complex that I did cheat a little and look up a map, you know, online so I could kind of know where I was.
Two things.
It's big.
I'll tell you why that's not cheating, and you can feel better about yourself. One, both Nolan and I had in-game maps. It sounds like Nolan played a remake of the game either on
both.
Switch or something. Okay. I played the Switch version this week. It was just the easier one for me. Really loved it.
Luminaries of the Legendary line.
In-game map you were just able to pull up. But Kenny, I do believe that there's a map in-game. Since I played a different version, I had it at all times, but I think in the NES version you can find one. It's crude. However, why this is why it's not cheating what you did. Because the manual that came with the game had a map in it.
A good one,
Perfect.
probably.
And it's crude, but it already had listed 5 or so towns already marked on your map so that you can kind of know the name and location.
That's huge.
Your sort of starting places and kind of initial game goals.
The manual gives a list of spells and their effects so that you know them already.
Sick.
And it identified all of the keys that you'll need to complete your quest.
I remember the first book for the first game and how good it was.
Of course,
and it was great. It also is good about giving you all the information about things, but then not giving you information about like a couple of like late game weapons. So you think you know everything and you've like gotten all the stuff, and then you still discover more stuff that wasn't in the manual, and it blows your childhood mind. And so I trust that they did a great job with it. And I'm glad to hear that there was a map. So I don't feel bad. My guilt is gone.
And what helps for me is that I'm never going to play any of these games like they were meant to be played when they came out. I play these games like I had internet. And so I play them with a guide. But that's how I've always played these games. So it makes it more enjoyable for me because I'm not... Again, playing this game the way that it was meant to be played, you can do it. It's going to take a summer or a year. Like just wandering around and finding a clue here, a clue there. I get the appeal, and I would love it in an ideal world, but I'm a grown man with no kids, and I just don't have time for that. So
with no kids,
and so I have no
So
time.
busy.
Yeah.
Aged.
Kenny, you mentioned that this feels like a PC RPG, and I disagree. It feels so early NES to me in the best way. It feels... Okay. The look of the game, I can see maybe where the scrolling text might remind you of PC, but I played both versions. I played the original NES for a while, and then I switched over to the updated one, which is like an Android version. Graphically, I prefer the original one. I think the original one looks fantastic.
Interesting.
I think the colors are vibrant and very easy to look at today. The black text, well, not the black text, the black boxes and like battle scenes are a bit bland, but
the
overworlds looked great and the character work looks great. I actually dislike the look of, I mean, the new one looks good, but it looks like a mobile game.
A lot of people don't like the character or the sprites, the character artwork, and
there are some Final Fantasies that have re-released on mobile too that look even mobile.
I like those. I don't. A lot of people don't. It doesn't bother me at all. But I do agree with you that the art, and I was even remarking as I was watching Kenny, a lot of the enemies that you face, to have that much detail on NES in the 80s is remarkable. They look, it's dated. Okay, I'm not saying that when you play this game it's going to feel fresh. It feels 80s NES, but it feels great 80s NES.
Yeah, it does.
Overworld didn't impress me as much as the enemy artwork like that. And the thing that I found out this week that is super cool is that all of those enemies were designed by the Dragon Ball artist Akira Toriyama, who also did the character art. But what he did, my understanding, is that he drew, painted, whatever, he created each of the characters and the enemies, and then a development team turned them into pixels.
Ooh.
And so
Pixelified them.
So you're getting like this really fresh, creative, detailed as possible on the NES representation of these characters, and it's super remarkable.
Yeah. Because NES, like any old game that has a limited amount of memory, you're going to get things like some enemies being reskins of other enemies. But that kind of works as you're getting progressions of difficulty anyways. You know, it's normal for you to have a basic version of something and then a harder version and then a really hard version. That works well for story reasons. So I don't mind that at all. I agree. The sprites look great. I remember the first game so well, and I do, but I'm having a hard time recollecting the specific detail. I believe in the first game you're getting specific enemies, and they are in the context of a background. It wasn't all black like this. You had your black text box. I believe I'm right as well.
But
and so
that they would go backwards
with so many
enemies.
I
felt. Yeah, it was the multiple enemies and then probably diversity of background and getting all of those to show up at the same time. And so it was easy to just put everything onto a black screen, and it worked, but I missed that a little bit. I would have loved if there was context of background and place where you were that was also happening. So I missed that visually. But beyond that, I agree. This game looks pretty good for when it came out. It's very clear where you are. The world that you're in and what's going on for the most part. It takes a little while to kind of immerse yourself, but once you're kind of in the game and understand towns and how they work and what everything means, it looks pretty good.
I think the Switch port does most things better, adds a lot of improvements. Even graphically, I prefer that one. However, there is one area where I don't prefer it. It's not bad, but I don't prefer it. I think the music in the NES version is
insane,
spectacular, and that
it's
sound
great.
font, they do well bringing it to the Switch, and I think it's fine. But there is something that is so good about those chip tunes that they're able to do in that one. Particularly the overture at the beginning is so iconic,
dude. And them coming out of that
out
cave
of the darkness,
and the screen is dark, they have a torch and it slowly lights up. That was like one of the better NES intros I've seen.
and it's so early is the thing. But
yeah.
I thought the music, there's a variety of music. I thought all of them are really, really done well. I still think Final Fantasy has it in the music field when it comes to these two comparisons.
Do, but the battle music here is, I really like it.
And
it's so good.
You've got to have good battle music because you're going to be in a lot of battles, and so it could get redundant, but they did it really well, and it doesn't.
And I recognized it from newer. I've played Dragon Quest 9 on the Switch.
Oh, that's fun.
And they
keep
most
some of those motifs.
Yeah, most of these series do. They just make them better. The music and look at this game shocks me at how early it came up.
It's good. It's a little repetitive because there's definitely a loop that happens a lot, but it's not annoying. And so there's some of these old games that I'm like, turn off the music, just mute it, put on something else if I'm going to be playing for a long time. That's not me at all. I was turning my headphones on to make sure I was feeling fully immersed in the game. And so, like, I'm with you. The music absolutely works here for me.
If you want to play it today, there are many different ways to play it. I've already established, but I played the most recently port remake with it came out on iOS, Android, and Switch. They do iOS and Android is a little bit more mobile in that, but the Switch version is really nice in my opinion.
It's great.
And gives you some quality of life. So we mentioned the map is always available to you. The other thing that's really nice is that, and this is just so nice, you're able to use your return spell or an item to get back to any of the save points. So not just one.
Oh, that's huge.
Isn't that huge, Kenny? So you're able to go to any town with the return spell, which is super nice. There's also
and the battle screen is much better.
Battle screen is beautiful. It's not black. You get fully, artistic.
Just easier to see what's going on.
Yeah. But it still keeps the heart and soul of the game really, really well. If you want a copy for your NES, okay? So this is actually Dragon Warrior 2. So no, Kenny, the first time I'm going you, because we're talking primarily to people that are needing that version. That is
good, so I'm right.
much, much, much more expensive than the Japanese cart.
Ooh. Wait, Kenny, do you own it?
I own the first one. I might get my hands on a copy of the second one, though, because
Dragon Warrior 2 for your NES is going to run $53 used, loose, $53. Right now, for new, we're looking at about $4,000.
Whoa!
Should you get a new one, Kenny?
Dude.
Someone should send me a new one.
And you can put a case over the box?
No, you can open it up and play it?
No.
No. If I get a new one, I would absolutely keep it, but then I would also buy a loose one and play it in my NES for real, too.
I will just say, for anyone listening, when this episode goes live, it's pretty much Kenny's birthday. And if you want to send him a used or new Dragon Warrior, he hates... Oh, no, we shouted out in Discord, so I'm not giving any clues. Then send him... Here's his address.
Stop.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. I am very interested, primarily, I think we all are, on where Nolan is going to land with this. But I do want to pass it over to Kenny first with a remark. I think on the podcast and in our community, I'm often considered the JRPG boy amongst us three. And I think that's true. But like the earliest days of the JRPG, I think belong to someone else.
Belong to me.
Group. Because Kenny, this week...
know.
We mentioned it, but Kenny and I this week played a lot of this game together. I was grinding near the end game while I was watching him, and I was one of his villagers. He would ask me if he needed a clue, and I would give him a vague clue. So it was just interesting because Kenny is like the earliest of the JRPG boys here. But what is your final thoughts on Dragon Warrior 2?
Yeah. So, I mean, this one's not a surprise for me. This is like yes, and yes for me, because reasons we've already talked about, nostalgia reasons, and I love sequels and everything else. So let me just like talk about the game some in final summary instead of like unveiling what my non-surprising answer is. This one is challenging. I think the moments that are the most rewarding, your exploration and your discovery through like these clues that you get, might be a turnoff for some folks who want to play this game but are in a hurry, which is fine. You just need to know that. But this game took one of my all-time favorite, although imperfect games and improved it in literally almost every possible way, which is just the most fun thing to experience ever. It is challenging. It has some frustrating moments. There's a few kooky choices that are going to feel punishing. Like at some point you're going to come across a group of enemies that just cast, is it defeat?
Yeah.
And then like literally party. You just die. So there's some things that like are just like eye roll. But if you can get over those things, and if you're willing to play the game and experience what it has for you, it's going to be an absolutely magical experience. It has character, a lot less rough edges than its predecessor, a ton of influence on the genre and the series and on later video games to come. And so just like a lot of value in like historical reasons. And it's just so fun for me to get to revisit this one. And I'm sorry I'm waxing eloquent, but I can't help it. In fact, there are 3 games that are in the Erdrick line. I might have to play that third one like slow on my own and maybe do like some bonus content around that or something, because
I would watch you do that with Dustin in the channel like y'all talking.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'll be on the soundboard.
Yeah, we'll see, but that sounds amazing. This game is perfection, except it's not quite, but I love it. All of my NGPs, unsurprisingly.
Okay.
All right, Nolan.
The game's not perfect, first of all.
Perfect for Kenny.
It's perfect for Kenny and not many others. I don't remember what I said about Dragon Quest 1. I imagine it had something to do with the grindy nature of it, the difficulty, and the lack of direction. While the quality of life improvements are there, yeah, all 3 of those things are still a problem for me playing a early Dragon Quest game. Mostly the story side of it, and this surprised me. I realize now how much I value the tweaks that Final Fantasy did make to the genre. I think they took it into the right direction, and they brought it to the masses. I know Dragon Quest is huge in Japan, and it always has been, but not for us. We got these games, and then they took a break for a while. Whereas Final Fantasy guides you and rewards you more often, whereas Dragon Quest II is very punishing, and I don't feel like I'm making a lot of good choices, and yeah, there's a save thing now, but like I'm still losing a lot, and I have to talk to everyone, and I think having to talk to everyone is stupid. I don't give it New Game Plus. I can't. It's just a bit out of range for me. I appreciate a lot. You heard me talking about some of these things. Appreciate a lot of the game, but it's not enough to bring me back to it, and it wasn't enough to make me have fun this week.
That makes both DQ and DQ2 no New Game Plus status for Nolan, at least.
Can do it.
So it all comes down to me, and it will also not be a surprise. I love old school JRPGs. I love the grind, and I totally get how that is not a preferred gaming experience, particularly in 2023. Like, people like it quick and snappy, and that's not what these games were. They were for the slow-paced, enjoy over a lengthy amount of time, explore, be a detective, warrior, and find things out. I also, Nolan, prefer the Final Fantasy take on this, but I was amazed this week at not only the improvements from Dragon Quest, but the starts, like the firsts of a genre, and to to experience these in real time and to follow a guide, of course, with the benefit of having some of the time-saving things that the Switch port did have. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the game this week. It is imperfect. It is not fully fleshed out, particularly some of the final areas of the game.
They're so hard.
Yeah, just very unfair. I mean, the last boss has more than double the HP of the previous boss right before it. It's just like you might get to the last boss and not be able to beat it. I fought the second to last boss in one time. I was able to do it. The last boss I fought about a dozen times and killed him when 2 of my party members were dead and my guy had 2 HP left, and I did a Hail Mary attack and finished him off. I've got a screenshot. It's amazing.
That feels so good.
I was able to finish the game this week.
That's impressive.
And if Dragon Quest is like the original JRPG that established a genre, Dragon Quest II defined that genre. Wow. And I think that this is an excellent experience and had a lot of fun with it this week. I definitely give it my vote for New Game Plus status, which means that Dragon Quest II Luminaries of the Legendary Line is New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? On YouTube, 41% of the polls said yes, it's worth playing today. 10% said no, and 48% have never played it before.
That was a higher percentage of people familiar than I expected, but I guess this game is popular for more popular for a reason than I realized.
And more popular now than maybe 10 years ago. So
definitely.
The reason why I pushed Dragon Quest is the way that we were calling it this week. And I actually started thinking, hey, we're going to do Dragon Warrior because that's what we got in North America.
They almost
Since it's been re-released, everyone knows it now as Dragon Quest.
It's branded that way. Yeah.
So all the DS games came to America.
So it kind of had the same issue, slightly different, but same issue as like Final Fantasy. Remember how we got some here that were misnumbered because that's when it came to us. But it's been worked out now.
Naming is hard. Like they released a game called Final Fantasy and it wasn't the last one.
Okay.
We had many people play
Final Fantasy.
By the way, for those of you just listening, that was Kenny laughing at his joke. It wasn't one of us. So there are many of you that wrote and played along with us this week. Love to include a few of your thoughts here. The 16-bit Big Boss, or boys, I don't know, emailed us and said Dragon Quest II is a New Game Plus worthy game despite being old. Not like your 45-year-old uncle who was still in good shape old. Think of your grandpa who was in Nam old. There are a lot of quality of life features missing here. Not saving anywhere, old school encounter rate, difficult world map, etc. that we have today in almost every game. However, we have YouTube game facts, PDFs of every strategy guide and game manual ever online, and a myriad of sources to help you through this game. There's no need to beat your head on a wall anymore unless you want the original experience. Kenny, if you want to enjoy a high quality retro JRPG and the sequel to the game that launched an entire genre, then Dragon Quest II is worth a look.
Is your grandpa okay?
Chris said, I first played Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 3 back to back on the recent Switch port. This allowed me to appreciate things about DQ2 I may not otherwise have, such as the addition of 2 more party members, a greater focus on story, a more open-ended world and objectives, multiple enemies per encounter, a ship, etc. We take these things for granted in 2023, and it's very easy to look at these things and forget how revolutionary they were at the time. This all said, though, DQ2 is rough if you are seeing it to completion. The second half leaves you mostly directionless, free to wander with only a brief mention of what you are supposed to do. Push through the confusion, and you are rewarded with a steep difficulty spike that pretty much demands mindless grinding. Play it as intended. I cannot in good conscience recommend completing. My suggestion is to grab a copy for the Switch, look up a guide, and move through all 3 games at a brisk pace. It's just so cool to see how the genre evolved between games, and I highly recommend checking it out if you are at all interested in that aspect of the game, or of the genre.
Kenny, I'll tell you this though, even though I'm not giving New Game Plus, for some reason I'm interested in playing the third one. Like I want to be like, okay, did the third one fix it? And you know what I mean? Like I'm not sick of it at all.
Right.
I think fans of the series note the third one as being not the perfected game of this early stuff, but the it is the quality one that if you're playing the classic, they say the third one is the strongest one.
Kenny's excited.
Okay, I'm playing it. It's decided.
We're watching.
I'm
I'll watch you.
You got to finish the second one, so you've got a few more months playing that one.
I'm going to. No, I'm going to. I'll let you watch.
I can't believe that you didn't finish it in time, and I hope you feel bad about yourself.
I can believe it, but I got very, very, very close, and I will finish it soon.
TM.
Bastius said, although I found some annoying flaws in this game, like the repetitive music, the lack of background in battles, the limited inventory space, the meh storyline, the slow grind, the exorbitant price of equipment, the uneven and sometimes punishing encounter rate, just to name a few, I still enjoyed playing this game with you this week and kept coming back to it. I believe these issues are normal for a game this age and so early in a franchise. I can't say it compares with the Final Fantasy, but it has a good classic RPG feel and struck a nostalgia chord even though I had never played it before. I absolutely loved the Old English. The translation team certainly put an effort on this one. Dost thou think Dragon Quest hast deserved thy vote for New Game Plus? Hast for me.
It really was that exaggerated sometimes.
It was, and it's funny
like
because the last game, Kenny, it annoyed Kenny on this
right.
one. He's like, oh, it's fine, it's fine.
This game can do no wrong.
It really is great. And then finally,
rose-colored glasses.
Marlian said, this game is an important memory of my childhood. When we finally got an NES, my parents wanted us to have a game where we had to read a lot. They decided to pick up Dragon Warrior 1 and 2. This game was a huge improvement over the first. It has a deeper story, 3 party members, when the Prince of Cannock wasn't dead, more monsters on the screen at a time. That seems to all know how to put your party to sleep. The land was vast and included the small landmass from the first game. The music is awesome. And finally, a hidden extra boss at the end. This game was awesome. My 8-year-old self would say. As an adult who has returned to the game, the pacing is a little tougher. The battles are way harder than they should have to be. Why can't I earn any real gold in the NES version? Why didn't they playtest the last area of the game without cheats? This game is not easy, but it is still an adventure and still worth checking out. Please play another version but the NES one if you want to beat it. My 8-year-old self would still give this NGP.
I forget Marlene.
My 8-year-old self gives his 8-year-old self a big old high five.
Yeah.
And yep.
Marlene's Discord pick is like a Dragon Quest character. I've always known Marlene's like a huge fan of the series. So it's nice to hear him write in.
Perfect. Glad that we picked his commentary to read. For now, we're setting aside Dragon Quest 2 until Kenny continues to play it later today. And we are going to randomly select, but not from our Retro Master list, because it is time for another Patreon poll!
But it's kind of a sad one.
It is the final traditional Patreon pool of the summer pool party, but it has been a much better summer pool party than last year's.
I would say so. Yes.
The quality of games we've gotten for our summer pool party has almost made up for the heat of this summer.
Man, it's been a hot one.
Almost.
Stats by Shane lead us to believe that GameCube is at the top, that overrated console.
And I attribute that to y'all pissing me off on that live stream. So I'll take it. I'll take those odds.
That's at the top, followed by PS2 and NES. But we've also got games like from the arcade and the Sega CD even that are entered into here.
Add-on action.
Let's see. A few games that were submitted. Bruntk submitted Roller Coaster Tycoon and Worms Armageddon.
Okay.
Andrew Childs submitted Pikmin and Star Fox Adventures.
Interesting.
Andrew's not the only one to submit Pikmin. A lot of Pikmins out there, I think, because of the recent Pikmin. Yep.
Yeah, Pikmin 4.
Andrew Duss submitted South Park Rally and SpongeBob SquarePants Revenge of the Flying Dutchman.
Don't hate. South Park games were really fun. And SpongeBob games are too.
Kenny, you would like to know that Not Enough Dogs submitted Dragon Quest 3.
What if I wouldn't? I kind of wouldn't be that mad.
We don't need to do that away. It's funny because Not Enough Dogs submitted Dragon Quest 3, but a couple of others submitted another Dragon Quest, a different Dragon Quest.
There are a lot.
But this was like a knockoff one where like it's a canon one. I don't remember what it's called, but
Interesting.
Weird, but we got our hooks in them now, and they want some more.
So from all the games that are submitted in our final Patreon pool of the summer, we are randomizing now. There were 16 entries for Pikmin.
16.
And it was not selected.
Okay.
It was
Sad
not
day for
picked.
the Pikmin people.
Man.
There were 6 entries for Halo 3.
But it was
And
not.
It was not selected.
It was not selected.
Okay.
I wouldn't have hated that either.
There were 6 entries for Bill's Endless Ocean.
Okay, I want to try it at some point.
But it wasn't selected.
I really don't want to play.
There were also 6 entries for the game that was selected.
Oh, God.
The game is a 2002
That's good.
fighting game
Oh!
that was released on multiple consoles. The one that we'll be playing it on is the GameCube.
Oh my God, they actually did it.
This
they
game
wanted
was
a fighter.
submitted by Garlisle, J. Robert,
Yes!
Cecil,
Yes!
and Sasser.
Yes!
The game that we're playing for the next 7 days is Soul Calibur 2.
Poetic that would be on the GameCube to wrap it all up. And it's a fighter.
Is this our first GameCube game and fighter of the summer pool party?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think we played any GameCube
I don't
games.
think we have either. So hype. I get the first play. Get wrecked.
Oh, okay.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Link is in this version because it came out on PS2 as well. But it's Soul Calibur's sword fighting. It's not punching. They all have swords in some way, and Link is in the GameCube version.
Link from Zelda.
Yeah, he's on the cover. Dude, no. It's good.
Okay, they've been pushing for a good fighter because we haven't had many of them.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a hard sell for Kenny and me, at least, probably.
It will, but I will button mash my way through getting as much out of it as I can.
Nolan, is this one where each character has about 50 different moves?
Yes.
All
It's
right.
like it's like Tekken.
It's technical. It's technical.
You should
Yeah.
you should pick up a character you like, Dustin, and
Yes.
try and learn
That's
at
what I'm gonna do.
least a few kind of core moves.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll
know.
love doing that versus trying to try everybody out.
And I'm gonna put it on easy.
You'll be a Voldo player for sure. It's like a
A
BDSM
Volvo,
character.
the car.
Voldo
All right.
is a BDSM character.
Find a copy of Soul Calibur 2 and play it along with us this week.
Be sure to join our Discord server. We recently were denied partnership, so that's sick. But we do want you to be there regardless. So go to discord.gg/newgameplus.
Nolan's salty, but I'm not. And I want you to also show your support for this amazing community by joining us at patreon.com/NGP podcast, where you can voice your support with your wallet by encouraging us to continue to bring you awesome retro gaming content every week at whatever level is right for you. We want to say a number of shout outs today because some people have joined on for the end of the summer pool party. So here are some new patrons that we've got this week. Steel'em Willem, all caps, KL31, Psycho Mantis, King Owen 20,
Reference.
Swaggy Taco Fish,
Yum.
Okay.
which I can't say without laughing. Poop McFart upped their patronage, so that's great. And Kenny's Beard also upped.
Okay.
They're
Support
doing
again.
They're trolling us with the
Again.
names.
They're doing it. Wow.
It's so
they
funny.
did up.
They did.
Okay.
They
that's
did.
good.
That's like 3 weeks in
That's
a row, and it's so
funny.
funny to me. I reserve the right to not read your name if I want to, but by all means, otherwise make us laugh. I don't care. Also, big shout out to Kirk Savage, who
Or
joined
Savage.
us as a new producer level
Hey.
supporter.
Ooh. Hey, there's a secret channel on Discord.
All kinds of perks coming your way, Kirk. Thank you for your support. Of course, while we're shouting out people that are huge to us, we want to honor our director level supporters, Bro Jim, Daniel, Garlisle, Super Hypered, You are the cornerstone of what we do, and we appreciate you. And we got a big list of producers who support us on an ongoing basis, including Adam, Alex, Marlene, Antonin, Ben, Big Dude, Brunt, DH Bowser, Ellis, Fishy, Francesca, Gimbin, Harold, J. Robert, Jake, Jared, Joey, Jordan, Justin, Clint, Nicknack, Corey, Levi, Maxima, Not Enough Dog, Pedro, Sage and Shauna Thomas, Unbedavable, Siegfried, and Zion. You guys are awesome. We appreciate your support literally more than we can say, and we say it a lot.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and not YouTube. Links are in the show notes if you'd like to follow us there. And if by chance you work at YouTube, help us.
Call us, please. Help.
Yeah.
Give us an email.
We need help.
Yeah.
You can listen to us on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Before we say our team, I just want to pump the brakes. No one listens this far in the episode anyways.
Except for OGs.
They do.
We just listed our producers, and it would have been a great time to say this. Historically, at the conclusion of our pool party, we have done something fun that involves you.
And it involves less clothes.
And hotter water.
I mean, not
hotter water.
Actually, hotter water.
Hotter water. Stay tuned.
A lot of steam.
Stay tuned. Sweaty, sticky. Stay tuned to our Patreon for more information.
Woo! Y'all already know.
This video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we conclude our summer pool party with Soul Calibur 2. Until then, I'm still the Prince of Persia, because I forget where he's from. What?
I'm still a descendant of Erdrick, and I've got a token to prove it.
I'm a descendant of Erdrick, and I've got a token to prove it.
Same. And this has been New Game Plus.